Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast that comes to you from Haifa in northern Israel. I'm Gaurav Sawant, and even as we speak, the Israeli Air Force continues to pound multiple locations in southern Lebanon and even in Lebanon's capital Beirut. From where I'm standing across the Haifa Bay, you can hear the pounding of southern Lebanon and you can hear the roar of Israeli Air Force fighter jets up ahead. In one of the biggest bombing operations that have been mounted so far in this conflict, 100 Israel Air Force fighter jets simultaneously pounded a number of military installations or terrorist installations in southern Lebanon and in and around Beirut in one wave after the other late last night. There's breaking news that's coming in, the big story that we're getting you here on India Today, and that is the targeting of one of the top commanders of the Hezbollah in the past 24 hours. Suhail Husseini, the logistics commander of the Hezbollah, has been neutralized. The Israeli Defense Forces have confirmed that the logistics head of the Hezbollah has been neutralized. He was the man in charge of ensuring at the Hezbollah headquarters where all the weapons, the long-range missiles and the rockets are to be stored, distributed and sent out, and when they are to be launched. He was also the person in charge, according to Israeli Defense Forces, of tying up with Iran on the route from where these weapons would be brought into Lebanon to be targeting Israel. Based on pinpoint intelligence, Israel mounted an operation, an air-to-ground operation, in which, in a missile strike, Suhail Husseini was also killed in these operations. The big story, a top Hezbollah commander has been neutralized in Beirut. IDF carried out these massive airstrikes in Beirut. Husseini managed the Hezbollah logistics and also their budgeting. I want to cut across to India Today's Ashutosh Mishra, who joins me live from Beirut for more on this. Ashutosh, apparently the pounding from last night to now has been almost relentless. How have you coped?
Well, the situation has been extremely tense, Gaurav. Now there is the largest fear for the people of Beirut North and Beirut East that after this constant airstrike, now even the Hezbollah teams will take safe shelters in the safest area of the Beirut, and perhaps the Israeli intelligence will find them out, hunt them out, and that will lead to further damage to the civilians in Lebanon, in this part of Beirut. Now, as we have the information, late night till early morning there have been multiple airstrikes by Israel. And here the Hezbollah has issued a statement saying this morning they have attacked the artillery position in Dishon area with their barrage of rockets. But Suhail Hussein Husseini, who's the head of the Hezbollah's general staff system, has been neutralized in this offensive in the Dahia area and southern Lebanon region. Remember, largely the airstrikes are being carried out in the exterior part of Beirut, which is the southern Lebanon, and moreover in the specific target, the precise strike is taking place in the southern suburban Beirut. Now, more importantly, yesterday itself the Israel has announced more than the ground invasion and airstrike. Now they are also going to target the Mediterranean region, where often we have seen the Hezbollah fires barrage of these Fadi-1 or Fadi-2 missiles using their advanced launching system from the maritime region. So clearly in the notice that was issued to the locals in Arabic by the Israeli forces, asking them across Awali River to further southern region, do not venture out in the sea, do not take your boat or yachts inside, because now it's going to be the third pocket where the Israel is going to target the Hezbollah is from the sea region, from the Mediterranean region. So after airstrike, ground strike, and now it is going to be from the ocean, from the Mediterranean by this, as far as Israel offensive against Hezbollah is concerned, Gaurav.
And stay with me, and that's the second big story we are going to on this India Today special broadcast that comes to you simultaneously from Israel and Lebanon. The big story, the IDF has sent out leaflets. It's spreading messages on wireless, on mobile phones, in all across southern Lebanon, asking people to stay away from the southern region, asking them to stay away from the coastal region, asking people in southern Lebanon not to go to the beaches at all. Do not go to the beaches area. We are told Israeli military is likely to now mount an offensive an amphibious, massive amphibious offensive from the southern part, from the Mediterranean coast into Lebanon. That's the information that's coming in. Now, Lebanon's southern coast, residents have been asked to not to venture to the beaches. The conflict is escalating in multiple domains. IDF has said they're likely, this is what it, of course, is information that's coming in. The southern coast will soon be in the line of fire. And this would indicate, Ashutosh, that this is a multi-pronged offensive that the IDF is mounting. Air attacks continue. There are limited incursions and raids that are happening in the north. Elements of the 91st Division, elements of the 36th Division. There are 2 division elements that are already at the northern borders, and now perhaps an amphibious operation. Now, are these mind games or are there signs? Because apparently there were some missiles that were fired into Lebanon from the sea, and that would indicate that the Hezbollah are being trapped from multiple sides.
And that's what Israel is trying at the moment, cornering Hezbollah from all sides. The Golan division, one of the most active division of the Israeli troops, which are already advancing towards further north from the southern Lebanon border. But what makes significant this Mediterranean, the coastline from Awali River. Now, the message that was broadcasted by the Israeli authorities in Arabic for the people of Lebanon, that across Awali River, further southern coastline, do not venture out. Now, this also comes in a light, Gaurav, very important, that the Al-Radan, one of the most brutal force, which is also known as the special forces of the Hezbollah troops, which is Al-Ridwan, they yesterday issued a propaganda video where the Al-Ridwan shows its capability of firing projectiles towards Israel, and also the kind of technology assets they have even to venture out in the coastal line of Mediterranean from north to south, from central to south. So looking out that, this also makes very significant that Israel, perhaps their intelligence did acknowledge that there have been nearly, particularly in this round of the new phase of escalation, nearly 10 times often they have noticed that ballistics or the missiles, particularly Fatty 1, Fatty 2, have been fired towards Haifa and also the Nevatim air base. So on that particular line, looks like the Israeli intelligence has significantly noticed that not only the Mediterranean line also being used by Hezbollah to fire, but moreover, whenever these strikes are taking place in certain area, which is very nearly near the Awali River, that particular pocket, that's also helping Hezbollah to escape from those airstrikes. And perhaps when you have an air dominance with your fighter jets and the ground troops, they do not want to give a safe passage for the Hezbollah to escape through the Mediterranean line, because what can maximum be done? They can further go to the south or to the further north or central, or even take safe shelter in Cyprus. So that looks like another strategy to corner Hezbollah from all over. Remember, they are also advancing their troops near the Syrian particular pockets from the Golan Heights further. So even if there is a safe passage between the Syrian border to Lebanon, where Hezbollah has deployed nearly already 150,000 forces, if they further advancing towards Lebanon, that also need to be neutralized. That looks like a well thought strategy by Israel. They have advanced their new military guarding area near Awali River particular. They have issued a new statement calling out certain areas, certain districts, which is now will be totally military establishment, military zone, new guidelines for the locals. So this looks like a last attempt by Israel to go a full offensive against Hezbollah from all the terrain.
That's extremely interesting. Now look at the manner in which the Israeli Defense Forces are advancing, and very different from the operations that were undertaken in 2006. There were multiple lessons learned from 2006, and that is why this time not only is there a multi-pronged offensive, but here is an offensive where first communication of the Hezbollah is completely disrupted. Of course, they still have access to fiber optics, but beyond fiber optics communication, there is very little that Hezbollah can rely on. No longer can they rely on their pagers. Everyone across Lebanon has been asked to abandon their pagers because they do not know how many of those pagers could still be operational. That's point one. Point two, mobile telephony is something that they're very apprehensive about, given the technical intelligence skills, the signal intelligence skills of the Israeli Defense Forces. And that is why they're either relying on fiber optics, which again, there are some inputs that seem to indicate there is a level of compromise in terms of human intelligence that Israel has been able to get the fact that even Sohail Hussein Husseini, the logistics chief, was taken out. Imagine if you look at the entire line of leadership from Hassan Nasrallah. So there is no top leadership. Fuad Shukr, the second rank of military leadership, the third rank of communications leadership, or now the logistics head. All of them have been taken out. Of course, there are redundancies that the Hezbollah has. We'll get you that India Today exclusive report. But let me also tell you the IDF has mounted a wave after wave of airstrikes in the past 24 hours. 100 Israeli Air Force fighter jets have pounded Lebanon almost relentlessly in the past 12 hours, neutralizing a lot of Hezbollah strongholds, their warehouses, their weapons depots, their logistics chain, their supply chains, their tunnels. This before the ground forces move in for a bigger kill. Now, when you say move in for a bigger kill, Israel is pursuing a strategy where it wants to ensure its entire northern areas, and northern areas are now being declared, at least several parts of Israel's north are being declared a complete military zone. Places like Shlomi, places like Metula, places north of about 50 kilometers from where I am standing is now a designated military zone, which means civilian movement is restricted. Even Israeli civilians cannot go into that area. Residents of that area, a lot had already evacuated. Some others are being asked to evacuate. Even south of that belt, there are people who are being told that some of their activities are going to remain extremely restricted. And this would show, in a way, if we were to talk about the meticulous operations that Israel is mounting, Ashutosh, that for the Hezbollah, unless they're able to counter-attack, while there have been rockets that were fired even last night into this area, they all fell on open ground. So which means their precision, striking ability appears to be severely restricted, Ashutosh.
Well, when your, the line of command is neutralized, including the Fawad Shukri, the biggest casualty for Hezbollah was killing of Fawad Shukri. Then you have a line of commander from communication, from intelligence, and from different chain of command, including logistic and supply. So clearly, the third line of leadership will take a lot of time to, firstly to line up things and issues new command and design new strategy. And perhaps what Israel intelligence is doing at the moment is not giving them appropriate time to, to recalibrate their capabilities. Al-Ridwan forces in a huge number, what I believe and what I'm hearing from Hezbollah sources, that they are being further being deployed towards the southern side. But what makes significant that the recalling of Hezbollah troops, the Al-Ridwan troops from Syria, has become a very difficult, since Israeli Air Force are keeping a very close tap on that particular narrow. In fact, there have been airstrike nearly 3 times. So all the logistics are being cut off. In the southern part, the biggest challenge for Lebanon and even Hezbollah is that there are still civilians in a huge number. UNHRC says more than 1 million of the Lebanese people have been displaced, but there are still thousands of these people. And now the biggest humanitarian crisis for Lebanon is that you have to provide them fuel, supply, essential food, medicines and everything. So that will also lead to collateral damage. And if Hezbollah continues to do so and engaging into a battle, fierce battle with Israel, that will lead to collateral damage on the people of Lebanon, and that will take a really, a negative impact on Hezbollah in perspective of people of Lebanon. So on that particular fight, you have to also fight for the narrative and moreover respond to the Israeli offenses against Hezbollah. Their ammunition stocks nearly the border that were planned. Remember, the Israel said when they found the tunnel that there was also planned to carry out another 7 October. That was demolished, that was neutralized. Several tunnels were exploded by Israeli ground troops. Their arms and ammunitions are being seized. But they have amount of supplies, these projectiles, because remember, that's a massive support they've been getting from Iran via the different routes. The Iran has been a key supporter, and even as I could read out the statement by Iran's foreign minister, where he says, we will continue supporting the resistance axis, and if Israel makes any mistake, it will face a bigger and more foul response. So even at the moment, Israel is unable to provide them more logistics, more arms and ammunition. So whatever the stock Hezbollah has at the moment in the southern particular pockets are being neutralized and seized by the Israeli forces. So in the hideouts, the respective hideouts Hezbollah had the moment, whatever stock they are left with, only option that they have at the moment, whatever they are targeting on Israel. So if the Israel offenses continues with more aggressively, perhaps they will be over and out with their arms and ammunitions if this, the magnitude of these offenses continues, Gaurav.
Of course, that's easier said than done, given the fact that Hezbollah has actually been training and preparing for this war from 2006 onwards. Their maze of tunnels, their logistics pile, the stockpile of rockets and missiles in this area very extensively. And considering Hezbollah was the strongest militia in the world, the strongest proxy of Iran, and for decades and decades. So if people ask what's Israel doing right now, a week after a massive missile strike launched by Iran last Tuesday, 181 rockets and missiles and ballistic missiles fired by Iran. Why is Israel not responding? Look at the operations on ground. Hamas, an attempt is being made to decimate it. Hezbollah, the strongest arm of Iran, an attempt is being made to degrade it, if not decimate it, at least south of the Litani River. And that is where, once you cut off the two arms of that regime in Iran, that's the Israeli strategy, that's the time they would then target Iran, is what sources tell India today. But as far as the Hezbollah is concerned, while they've received a lot of knocking on their chin, the entire top leadership taken out, the communications leadership taken out, missile, drone, ground forces commanders, logistics chief, communications chief, all of them have been neutralized. One of the top strategists for the Hezbollah told India Today's Ashraf Vani that they have multiple level of redundancies. They're almost like an organized army. If the commanding officer is taken out in an operation, the second in command takes over. If the second in command is taken out, then a company commander takes over, or an adjoining battalion CO is brought in. That's the way it's done in armed forces across the world. And here, according to the logistics chief or the strategist of Hezbollah, they have redundancies in place. Listen in.
The resistance has rebuilt itself with respect to its command. So Hezbollah has rebuilt itself with plans and with alternative command. There is always in military circumstances a commander and then a commander for emergencies. This emergency commander also has an alternative emergency commander, and this exists in self-respecting armies, including what strategic plans they have in Hezbollah. So Hezbollah has these internal structures, and Hezbollah has the capability to alternate between one commander and another in less than 1 hour. Because the responsibility in place for the current commander transfers to the next, and they have the same capabilities. However, the commander in place has the main authority, so there is a whole level of command, which is the first won't be affected, and I tell you, it won't be affected. With due respect to these commanders that has been assassinated by an Israeli aggression and their reverence, they are, because let's say, how old were they? And I think it was time for their retirement anyways, with chapeau bas for their work and their sacrifices that they did to the resistance in the way that to protect Lebanon and the people of Lebanon. And there is no way they would have retired without establishing their successors. The new commanders in place are younger and they have more effectiveness in the new technology. They have a better way and plans and youth and fresh plans for the war to continue this resistance in a much bigger effect against the Israeli entity aggression against Lebanon.
So the strategist of Hezbollah claims there are multiple redundancies in place. Even when the top leadership is taken out or a tactical level leader is taken out, there are others to fill into those boots and carry on operations against Israel. But what's the situation right now on ground? Let me get you this report where Israeli Air Force, they're relentlessly pounding bases of the Hezbollah, not just in southern Lebanon, but even now there are 30 to 35 localities in Beirut that were initially identified. Civilians asked to move out. And then, since Hezbollah has most of its bases underground, beneath the surface, bunker buster weapons were used to take out multiple localities in Dahiyeh, where the Hezbollah has its central headquarters, around Dahiyeh, and even in Yarun. Now, these are some of the areas that have been targeted by the Israeli Defense Forces, forcing some of the top Hezbollah leaders to take shelter in mosques. And the moment they come over ground, the moment they're seen on the streets, there's either signal intelligence, there's electronic intelligence, or there is human intelligence, based on which it is easier to identify them and track their movements. Now, the moment they come out of their underground bunkers, Israel is of the opinion, at least intelligence officials and former intelligence officials here say, the moment a Hezbollah leader is out, he's a marked man, and then the countdown begins. We bring you more in this report.
On the eve of the October 7th Hamas attack anniversary, the Israeli military launched airstrikes on Lebanon's capital Beirut's southern suburbs in the most intense bombardment so far, since sharply escalating its campaign against the Hezbollah group last month. Large fireballs lit the darkened skyline and booms reverberated across Beirut. The Israeli military said fighter jets struck targets in Beirut belonging to the Hezbollah's intelligence headquarters and weapons storage facilities. The IDF also struck in South Lebanon's Yaron village, claiming that Hezbollah fighters had taken shelter in it. It said strikes also targeted Hezbollah in the Bekaa area. Damaged and burnt buildings were seen on Monday morning in the aftermath of Israeli strikes in Dahiyeh, Beirut's southern suburbs, with plumes of smoke rising from the rubble.
I'm currently in the Amatya Hills. This is the hill area of the Lebanon where mostly people come for the safety and for their security. After the bombings in the suburbs of South Beirut, many families who could afford have shifted to this hilly hill station, or we can say, of Lebanon. But here also the Israeli air defenses are following all those people who are on their target and even attacking in these hills. You can see how much damage has got created in the building.
Israel accuses the Hezbollah of deliberately embedding its command centers and weaponry beneath residential buildings in the heart of Beirut. Hezbollah, though, denies storing weapons with civilians.
This is Zaytuna port area, this is the Bay Area, and right behind me is the Mediterranean coast, and always caught in the crossfire are the innocent civilians, the citizens, and that's exactly the case what I see here in Lebanon as well. Ever since the Israel airstrike started happening in southern part, hundreds of the Lebanese or the Syrians living in that southern suburb have taken shelter near the Bay Area. They are sleeping on the road. I see the huge number of women, the children who are living here in literally difficult situation and condition, and there's always a fear as the Israel offenses are continued, the Hezbollah also retaliating, and if the conflict escalates further, probably it will affect the entire Beirut.
The conflict in Lebanon, which started a year ago with cross-border strikes by the Hezbollah in solidarity with Hamas, has rapidly expanded in the past couple of weeks. With Ashraf Wani and Ashutosh Mishra across Lebanon, Bureau Report, India Today.
And even here where I am in Haifa, the situation remains extremely precarious. Despite being relentlessly pounded, there are locations from where the Hezbollah is still able to target northern Israel. In areas like Metula, which is extreme north and fairly close, there are shorter range rockets that the Hezbollah is still able to use, though every effort is made to use a weapon locating radar and neutralize the Hezbollah as quickly as possible by the Israeli Defense Forces. But even where I stand here in Haifa, which is some distance away, the third largest city in Israel, considered relatively safer, the situation does become extremely tense at times. For example, in the past 24 hours, at least 5 rockets have successfully evaded the Iron Dome system and hit various localities. Fortunately, or as people here in Israel say, with God's grace, it's just God's blessings that those rockets have fallen in open areas and not on buildings. They've fallen, in fact, in one instance where I reported from ground zero, in a cluster of 6 buildings right in the central roundabout of the road. So the roundabout was destroyed, but all the buildings, despite damage to the window panes and to automobiles parked in the area or to a kindergarten, fortunately no children were there at school but at that time, but buildings were damaged, people survived. We get you more in this report.
This is the moment Hezbollah missiles hit the Israeli port city of Haifa for the first time.
I was at my home, which is like 500 meters from here. I heard a boom, and I heard in the radio of Ichud Hatzala that there is a site here in this junction. I went straight away. Firstly, in the beginning, we didn't find any injuries, and then I saw that this building, showed them this building. There was shreds of glasses for the missile in this building. I went inside, and I found 4 people injured, between minor to moderate. And then I just went out. I called the emergency forces.
Ambulances and first responders reached the scene. Bulldozers moved in to clear the rubble, the strike hitting cars, buildings and leaving a deep crater in a road. Haifa is an important city. It's home to one of the largest Israeli ports as well as naval and military bases. The Israeli army says it's investigating why its air defense systems failed to intercept 5 rockets that penetrated deep into Israeli territory. As more than 120 rockets rained down on Israeli towns and cities on Sunday. The barrage set off sirens across Israeli cities and towns as another Hezbollah missile struck down in the northern city of Tiberias. And in the town of Kiryat Shmona, this was caught on camera.
This is a strike in the heart of Israel. I would say it's one stage lower than hitting Tel Aviv. So maybe this is a message to the Israelis that after Haifa, it started in the north with Kiryat Shmona, and then the Hezbollah is, so to speak, upgrading it.
Hezbollah says it aimed medium-range Fadi-1 rockets towards a military base in Haifa and then targeted another one in Tiberias, saying it was in response to the slaughter of Palestinian and Lebanese people. But this latest barrage is certainly a message that the group still has capabilities despite the blows it suffered in the past couple of weeks. Meanwhile, Israel has kept up its heavy bombardments on Lebanese soil. Massive explosions have rocked the southern suburb of the capital Beirut on Monday, as Israel said it struck a Hezbollah weapons facility. They joined days of massive airstrikes of what were up until a fortnight ago densely packed neighbourhoods. Laura Khan for Al Jazeera, Beirut.
It's a shot in the arm for Iran. Even as we speak, we are told Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet the Iranian president in Turkmenistan. So Masoud Pezeshkian is also traveling to Turkmenistan. There would be a meeting with the Russian president, and Russia has either obliquely or directly promised support to Iran in its war in case there's a targeting by Israel and the United States of America. And this is something that makes this conflict extremely, extremely dangerous in this region. Remember, Iran and Russia have been cooperating very extensively when it comes to operations in Ukraine. whether it's the drones, artillery, or several other bits, there is cooperation. Iran has been supplying its long-range unmanned combat aerial vehicles to Russia to target Ukraine, and now Russia is out to return the favor. I once again want to bring in India Today's Ashutosh Mishra for more on this story. And Ashutosh, this is what makes this war, which is as of now vertical between Israel and Iran, very, very precarious in case Russia and the United States, US getting directly involved, and Russia, even if it gets indirectly involved.
Well, the kind of reports that were emerging, Gaurav, that Russia could provide S-400 or perhaps already provided S-400 air defense system and subsequently the Sukhoi 35. And in that case, there are also reports coming from Iran, which Iran had, of course, not made it official that they are sending their, the fighters to get a training of Su-35 in Russia. So if that case, of course, it will be indirect support. And if you remember, during last year, several attacks when these rockets were intercepted in Israel's southern Israel by the Iron Dome system, many were these rockets had a footprint of made in Russia or perhaps logistic support and provided by Russia. So clearly there is indirect support of Russia as far as this conflict against Israel is concerned. Now whether it will be because training their fighter pilots, giving them a support system, giving them a fighter jet, that will be a direct involvement of Russia in this particular conflict, knowing the fact that America is also aiding Israel with billions of dollars with arms, ammunition and every kind of possible support even at the global platform. But Iran significantly, even after having such support, the biggest challenge what is faced, that when it comes to targeting Israel, it will be only through the projectiles given the distance, the physical distance of more than 2,000 kilometers. And that's also make the similar challenge even for Israel if they have to target their nuclear facilities, if they have to target their power facilities or even the military installation, the required adequate intelligence and subsequently refueling jets, intelligence jet, number of fighter jets, and that particular territory when even you have to fly over Jordan, you need consent of Jordan as well, keeping the allies and American support makes very significant and very crucial. So given the geographical challenge and terrain challenge for both the Iran and Israel, largely it will be only the ballistic when it comes to Iran and Israel, which is imminent. We know sooner or later Israel will retaliate to the offenses carried out by Iran when they fired nearly 200 of these barrage of the missiles on Israel. But involvement of Russia could only be logistical, technical and support of the intelligence, whereas America is also providing the same to Israel.
America, of course, is involved more directly. America has been using its fleet in the Mediterranean Sea to target the Houthi rebels and also to neutralize incoming missiles. So America is more directly involved in this conflict in protection of Israel. In fact, former US President Donald Trump, the presidential candidate in the upcoming elections and the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald Trump has come out very strongly against the Joe Biden-Kamala Harris administration in the United States of America. President Trump has said had he been in power, he would not have permitted an October 7 terror attack to happen. He would not have permitted this conflict to escalate to this situation, and he would have ensured that allies are better protected. Very, very strong words coming in from former US President Donald Trump. In fact, in his presidential campaign, all throughout, he's been talking about the failures of the Biden administration, the Biden-Kamala Harris administration, saying whether it's the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, he says once re-elected, even before the inauguration in January 2025, he would ensure that Russia-Ukraine conflict comes to an end. He would also ensure allies are never let down. And this is where American support to Israel becomes extremely crucial, Ashutosh. Not just American support to Israel in terms of intelligence, in terms of logistics, in terms of weapon supplies, in terms of re-ensuring that they have all the weapons they require. The US Navy fleet is in the Mediterranean Sea actively taking down incoming missiles, including missiles that came in from Iran. US Air Force fighter jets, 3 additional squadrons are now being deployed here to ensure Israel's protection.
Well, most of these barrage of the missiles have been intercepted by the United States in the Mediterranean, and that's, you rightly said, that direct support to Israel. But clearly, these kind of challenges when it comes to
Okay, we'll try and reestablish that link with Ashutosh in just a moment. But the situation on ground remains extremely precarious. Remember, it's been 1 year. October 7, 2023, the worst day in Israel's history. That was the day when a large number of Hamas terrorists had attacked Israel. From the south of this country, hundreds and hundreds of Hamas terrorists armed to the teeth, they entered Israel, went from one kibbutz to the other, one village to the other, one town to the other, from Sderot to Ashkelon to several other parts, and there they massacred innocent Israelis who were man, woman and child celebrating a festival. That's when they were massacred. That day onwards, Israel has actually sworn to fight back. Now, on the 8th of October, there was retaliation, or there was an uncalled for, as Israel puts it, attack from the Hezbollah in the north. 1 year later, Israel has started responding. Let me get you this report on 365 days of that conflict.
As the clock struck 6:30 a.m. on Monday, roughly the time when Hamas launched the deadliest ever terror attack on Israel, citizens gathered at the music festival site where revelers, nearly 400, were killed in cold blood on October the 7th last year. In Jerusalem, families of the 100 people who are still held hostage by Hamas collected outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence to observe silence, marking the first anniversary of the carnage that left over 1,200 dead and triggered a war that's still raging. Early in the morning, Hezbollah launched scores of rockets at targets in northern Israel. At least 10 people were injured in the northern Israeli city of Haifa. The Hezbollah confirmed the attack, claiming they had bombed a gathering of Israeli soldiers.
That's the school, the damaged door, debris all around. Fortunately, there were no children present in school at midnight or close to midnight when the blast took place. Rocket appears to have fallen here. Debris and shrapnel have damaged buildings here.
Meanwhile, IDF warplanes pounded locations in southern Lebanon, including the Bekaa Valley. India Today reporters in Beirut suburbs, which bore the brunt of attacks last week, saw a trail of destruction.
When the Israel Air Force carried out strikes in the southern Beirut, many rendered homeless. Their houses were destroyed, and many, out of fear, left their houses and now taking refuge on the road. And worst victim are the women and the children, as now they have no idea where to go. There are no homes, there is no life, there is no future, and it's all under concern and dilemma when the situation will calm down.
Israel claimed the mosque it bombed on Sunday in southern Lebanon was a Hezbollah terror base.
You can see how much damage has got created in the building. You can see here. People here say when in 2006 there was a war between Israel and the Lebanon. Even then this area was not targeted, but this time Israel is not sparing even this safe area or the hill station of Lebanon.
Israeli defense forces have been continuing their bombing campaign in Gaza. Tel Aviv claims the actions in Gaza are to prevent the Hamas from regrouping. Hamas is crippled, Hezbollah leadership virtually wiped out. But a year since the war broke out, one of Israel's primary aims, that is freeing all hostages, is yet to be a reality. And Tel Aviv probably has set new objectives after the Iranian missile attack. Israel's counter-strike on Iran and what shape it will take has put the world on tenterhooks. With Gaurav Sawant in Israel and Ashutosh Mishra and Ashraf Wani in Lebanon, Bureau Report, India Today.
And the question really is, when will Israel strike Iran and what will Israel strike in Iran? Initially, it was said that Israel would move in for the kill, ensure Iran can never become a nuclear weapon state and take out their nuclear facilities. Joe Biden went on record to say America would not be in favor of taking out Iran's nukes. At least that situation would spiral out of control or verge to that effect. Right now, the next in line of fire would have been the Iranian oil facilities, their oil storage, their oil infrastructure. But then again, that could lead to a massive spiral and oil prices escalating across the world. America again has some reservations about that. So you have top American leadership who've been regularly in touch with their Israeli counterparts. You've had Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who was in touch with Yoav Gallant, the Defense Minister of Israel, almost multiple times. You had General Eric Kurilla, the CENTCOM commander, Central Forces commander, U.S. Central Commander, in touch with Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, the forces commander here in Israel. Is there an attempt to tell Israel not to strike Iran with its full might, or are they finalizing the targets? And what impact will it have on global oil? We get you more in this report.
As tensions rise in West Asia, the global economy is feeling the heat. Oil prices have edged upward, signaling potential threats to supply from one of the world's top producing regions. If Israel, supported by the United States, were to target Iran's oil installations, repercussions could be severe. Any such action would likely trigger a sharp rise in oil prices as supply diminishes.
There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There's nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss. But you know one simple thing. Iran's tyrants don't care about your future, but you do.
The move taken by our armed forces was the least punishment for the occupying Zionist regime in the face of the crimes, the unbelievable crimes committed by that regime, the bloodthirsty regime, the wolfish regime.
The Karg Island is Iran's main oil loading terminal. It handles over 90% of the country's crude oil exports. Oil tankers could be seen vacating the waters around Karg Island, fearing attacks. Data from the European Space Agency's Sentinel satellites, processed through the Earth Observation Browser, showed at least 9 vessels, likely oil tankers, east and south of the island on September the 28th. A follow-up image taken on October the 3rd captured a stark contrast, with only one vessel in the vicinity, apparently on the move. An attack on Karg Island could cripple Iran's exports, but spark equally harsh countermeasures by Tehran. Iran could retaliate by striking American or its allies' energy operations in the Gulf. It could blockade the Strait of Hormuz, leading to major supply chain disruptions. Iran could also step up the tensions in the Red Sea with the help of its proxy, the Houthis, by targeting oil tankers and forcing traffic to reroute. US President Joe Biden has expressed hope that oil installations will not be targeted by Israel.
The vast majority of our allies around the world as a way to bring this to an end. Look, the Israelis have every right to respond to the vicious attacks on them, not just from the Iranians, but from everyone from Hezbollah to Houthis.
A similar face-off was last seen in April when Iran launched missiles and drones at Israel, the latter responding by attacking an Iranian airbase. The two countries stopped at that, and no further escalation took place then. The latest crisis, however, may not end that easily. With Gaurav Sawant in Israel and Rajesh Pawar in Iran, Bureau Report, India Today.
So the situation here across the region remains extremely precarious and will have an impact not just in this region but across the world. And that is why calls for calm and peace. But Israel is very clear. After 181 ballistic missiles were launched on Israel last Tuesday, there will be a response, and that response will not be symbolic. It will be for effect. It will be, as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu puts it, to ensure a regime change in Iran. We'll be tracking that story very, very closely because Iran also promises an even harsher punishment. This area clearly is on the edge. Gaurav Sawant in Haifa, northern Israel, for India Today.